Hello and welcome to News in Depth here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. Tonight on News in Depth, we are joined by Adam Jasser, News Director at TVP World, to discuss three stories shaking global politics. From President Donald Trump's renewed appetite for Greenland and the strategic stakes of the Arctic to the political fallout of the Epstein files saga. And finally, Tulsi Gabbard's claim that fears of a Russian attack on NATO are exaggerated. Adam, welcome back. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, a lot to cover here. So I want to start with Trump and Greenland. Let's kick off with a short soundbite that I want to share, and I'll get your view.
We need Greenland for national security, not for minerals. We have so many sites for minerals and oil and everything. We have more oil than any other country in the world. We need Greenland for national security. And if you take a look at Greenland, you look up and down the coast, you have Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. We need it for national security. We have to have it.
So the whole Greenland discussion has been reignited. What do you make of this?
There are two issues here. One is strategic, and the other is the Trump way. So the strategic issue is that obviously Greenland is important strategically, and I wouldn't entirely believe Mr. Trump when he says it's only national security and not the minerals. I think it's both. It's the minerals and it's the strategic security. And let's just remember that Mr. Trump and his team just announced the new national security strategy. And the central tenet of that strategy is that the United States is going to focus on the Western Hemisphere and the Arctic as well. And if you look at the map, then obviously you see the reason why, because Greenland is this huge blob in the Western Hemisphere that Trump thinks in security terms.
Right.
So it's a return to what they call the Monroe Doctrine.
I want to come to the Monroe Doctrine in just a second, but in terms of, you talk about strategic importance of Greenland. He's talking about Russian and Chinese ships. I mean, you know, the Antarctic, or the Arctic rather, has been a kind of a hotspot. It's been building for a while. I mean, China and Russia have been, exploiting various advantages there. But it belongs to Denmark, and Denmark is part of NATO. Why does America need to actually make Greenland part of the United States?
That is a good question, and this could be the second aspect I mentioned,
okay.
Mr. Trump being Trump. But I would like to dwell on this strategic issue, because
okay.
Greenland at the moment is probably underdefended. And it's also true that Denmark does not necessarily have the money and the capacity to really boost its defenses. So if the United States is supposed to really take care of the North Arctic security and is supposed to commit more funds and perhaps increase its presence in Greenland and potentially build also a deep water port there, which is lacking in that area, to make the Western, American, NATO deterrence against Russia and China stronger, then America is saying, well, you know, we want to control the territory where we are going to invest.
Right.
And this is what, of course, the Danes and the Greenlanders and the Europeans don't like.
No, they don't. Now, you mentioned the Monroe Doctrine. What's that all about?
Well, this is the old American vision of foreign policy, where we're not imperialists. However, Americas are ours. So we don't meddle in European, Asian affairs. We stick to America.
Right.
And of course, you know, that is long gone. For several decades, America was involved in security in Asia, in Europe. It fought 2 world wars as part of the leading, effectively, the victorious coalitions there. So Trump, and this should not come as a surprise, because he's been always talking about this, he wants to say, we limit our interests to the Western Hemisphere.
All right, so that's the Monroe Doctrine. There's a short soundbite, actually, that relates to exactly the point that you're making. I'd like to share that.
Well, it's actually I guess it's the soundbite from the person he appointed.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, that one.
300 years. And we have lived under more flags than anyone living in the continental United States. But guess what? The flag that we ended up with is the greatest flag, right, Winston? And that's the United States of America, because that's a flag that stands for liberty, opportunity, and security. And it's done well for us. And all we're going to do is go have us a great conversation with those folks in Greenland. They're in the Western Hemisphere, fits inside the Monroe Doctrine, and we're going to bring them some great Cajun food.
Right, so this is Jeff Landry, and he's governor of Louisiana.
Of Louisiana, and suddenly
he's an expert on Greenland. I mean, he's the envoy for Greenland.
He at least knows what Monroe Doctrine
well,
is.
That's a fact, yes, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
I hope he didn't learn about that yesterday.
Well, but he seems rather excited about this.
He seems excited.
What's he going to do, you think?
Well, I have no idea, but at least what he said in that soundbite that he was going to talk to Greenlanders about it.
Yeah, right.
This is another example of people who obviously have no experience dealing with international affairs that are taking prominent positions in the Trump administration. Steve Witkoff, the envoy for Ukraine, is another example. And just this week I think we heard reports that, or was it last week, but recently we heard reports that actually Putin almost selected him as the US envoy because of his inexperience. So this could be just another example of a person who runs the beautiful state of Louisiana, which is in the south, has nothing to do with the Arctic or the northern dimension, if you will, who suddenly is going to be the Trump's chief negotiator. So that illustrates, and just like Trump's words about getting Greenland, and it doesn't matter that Denmark has been in control of that territory since the 14th century, I guess, that it doesn't matter anymore. This is this kind of forceful, rather undiplomatic way of approaching things. And this goes down very badly, not just in Europe, because there's a lot of pushback from European capitals, but there's also pushback from the Nordic countries, so the ones that are invested in Arctic security, so Sweden, Finland, Norway. And the US recognizes how vital these allies are, and nevertheless it does something which is for them simply unacceptable.
Yeah, in fact there's another soundbite which relates to just that point. I think we've got that coming up now.
It's been a wake-up call for many of my colleagues, in the Arctic, and also for my colleagues in Denmark. One of the things that Trump has learned us is maybe to think on a much more short term, because usually both in Greenland but also in the Arctic, in the Western society, many of us think on a more strategic way of thinking politics, and sometimes we just need to think maybe much more short term. We need to see the effect right now. Right. Because Greenland has been underinvested, and that's one of the things that I agree with Trump on. In a couple of weeks, we'll be able to see that there will be results.
Why in a couple of weeks?
Because we're in different negotiations. So we need to make sure that we have
Greenland
the different and Denmark, so, and I'm just the cross in the middle.
So there you were talking to the Danish member of Parliament.
I'm a little embarrassed about the fact that you showed me there, but yes, I went to Iceland and did a number of interviews, and the Nordic countries are in a bind there, because on the one hand they are aware that Russia and China, but particularly Russia, are a risk, are a threat, and want to push into the Arctic much more. At the same time, they want to maintain control over their territories, and they want to be good allies of the United States. So they're juggling many balls at the same time. But the bottom line is that for all these Nordic countries, the question of integrity of their territories, sovereignty, which Trump also very often mentions, You know, this is the doublespeak that he says sovereignty is important, but then he says except Greenland, which is ours because we might have gotten there before the Danes.
Or even Ukraine, which you know, he's asking them to give up 20% of their land. I mean, what about their sovereignty?
So there's a lot of inconsistency.
Yeah, there are.
But I want to stress this point again, that the United States, if these security concerns are real in the Arctic, and I think there are legitimate reasons to take it seriously, it needs cooperation from the likes of Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, and Denmark. So if there needs to be a negotiation about what to do in the Arctic and what to do with Greenland, it should be done through negotiation rather than public statements of the sort we just saw.
And one would have thought, with all of these being NATO members, one would have thought that a collective NATO response to Greenland might have been the better option. What do you think?
But you see, this is a trouble that Trump doesn't really believe in NATO, and the people around him do not believe in NATO. So in a sense, he's logical. He's saying, NATO is very nice, but I don't trust NATO. So, again, he goes back to his instinct about the Monroe Doctrine and keeping everything firmly in America's hand, which, of course, is not a representative view even in the United States, which probably is worth underlining here.
Right.
That a recent poll, and I have it somewhere here, let me just double check that I don't give you a wrong number. I hope I have it. Yes, I have it. It's here. It's small print, so I'm going to read it. But there was a question this way around. There was a question in a recent survey in America. Do you favor U.S. withdrawal from NATO? Only 17% of Americans think this is a good idea. An overwhelming 64% believe that this is a bad idea or a very bad idea. So the Trump administration is a little isolated in this doubting into NATO. Yeah. And this is perhaps the reason why Congress took action to actually limit the U.S. the possibility of the Trump administration to scale down on the number of troops and the participation in NATO structures. Right. And of course, you're right. In the end, it should be this issue, how to fortify Greenland, should be a NATO matter.
Should be. And also, of course, we constantly hear from people in the Trump administration that Trump has no intention of leaving NATO, but on the other hand, you hear the opposite. So mixed messages. I'd like to move on now to your opinion on the European Union and its attitude towards Denmark and Trump's attitude to Greenland. What do you think the EU should be doing?
Well, what can it do? It cannot cancel the appointment of a special envoy, right? The issue...
Is there influence that can be exerted on the US in any way? Or some kind of solidarity with Denmark or something?
Solidarity is there. There are lots of statements. Today, the European leaders came out and said, hands off. And the Greenlanders themselves, 80% of Greenlanders do not want to be part of America. Small detail. But yes, but there's, apart from these expressions of solidarity and warnings and back channel communication with the Trump administration, but also with the Congress, where again many in Congress don't see it the same way as Trump.
Right.
There's not that much that Europe can do, because Europe has another problem, which is Ukraine, and this is its primary problem at the moment.
Right.
It needs to deal with. So the European leaders are now focused on maintaining the US engaged in helping Ukraine get the best terms possible in any possible peace deal. And suddenly they're thrown into another game. So it just complicates matters. I mean, I think part of the problem is, and now we are going back to the Trump factor, Trump is facing a lot of problems at home. And I think there is a possibility that this Greenland issue suddenly popped up because he wants to divert attention from other
smoke screen, something, yeah. Okay. I'd like to move on now in the short time that we have left, Adam, and to talk about Epstein. I mean, that saga is another one that's been going on for ages. Let's kick off with a short soundbite from Trump on that topic.
What this whole thing is with Epstein is a way of trying to deflect from the tremendous success that the Republican Party has. Like, for instance, today we're building the biggest ships in the world, most powerful ships in the world, and they're asking me questions about Jeffrey Epstein. I thought that was finished. I believe they gave over 100,000 pages of documents. And there is tremendous backlash. It's an interesting question because a lot of people are very angry that pictures are being released of other people that really had nothing to do with Epstein, but they're in a picture with him because he was at a party, and you ruin a reputation of somebody. So a lot of people are very angry that this continues.
Right, well, I mean, it kind of keeps popping up, doesn't it, the Epstein files issue? And as you just heard, there are 100,000 pages or new batch of papers released from those files. What's the issue now? What's flared up?
Well, let me go back to what I just said, that, you know, maybe Greenland, President Trump just said that it's a deflection from the fact that his administration is so successful. Maybe Greenland is a deflection from the fact that he needs to keep explaining to the American people that he's not involved with Epstein. So, you know, this keeps haunting him because he first promised when he was candidate that all the files will be released. Then when it turned out that he may be implicated despite his denials one way or the other, he blocked the Department of Justice from releasing these files. Even his own MAGA movement, just as they don't share all his views on NATO and some of the European allies, they also are suspicious that he's trying to hide something. And therefore it also creates discord inside his party. And now there was a bipartisan effort to release in Congress, and they forced the Department of Justice to release these files. But now it turns out that some of it is heavily redacted, that some stuff still has been removed, it's not complete, and so on and so forth. So it keeps dogging him, this affair.
Well, what gets me is, though, I mean, these files are not new. I mean, they've been sitting in some dusty shelf, since the previous administration. Why were they not released by then?
Because there were criminal proceedings which were concluded. Then it never went to court because Epstein died. His partner was convinced and sent to prison. And the paradox of this whole situation is that it was their right. And the MAGA movement that was arguing that there are some secrets in there and they need to be released. Until it turned out that, you know, you remember this tweet from Elon Musk when he and Trump fell out? You know, there was this moment.
And he said Trump was in the papers.
And he said, this is the reason. You know, I think this is a problem for this administration, that, you know, it just didn't deliver on what it promised I think, in this department.
I understood. I think the sooner that's cleared up, the better. We can move on to more important.
I'm not entirely sure that it is going to be cleared up because, you know, if it emerges that Trump was lying about his relationship with Epstein, this could be disastrous for him politically. It could be disastrous for the Republican Party in next year's elections to Congress.
Well, we shall see. In the last minute or so that we have left, Adam, a short quote from Tulsi Gabbard.
Another competent Trump appointee.
Well, we shall hear your view on her in just a second. I think we've got the soundbite coming up.
Deep state warmongers and their propaganda media are again trying to undermine President Trump's efforts to bring peace to Ukraine and indeed Europe by falsely claiming that the US intelligence community agrees to and supports EU/NATO viewpoint that Russia's aim is to invade/conquer Europe in order to gin up support for their pro-war policies. The truth is that US intelligence assesses that Russia does not even have the capability to conquer and occupy Ukraine, what to speak of invading and occupying Europe.
So that's Tulsi Gabbard, head of national security in the US. What do you make of that comment?
I think the context of this comment was that there was a Reuters report, so a credible news organization, reporting that US intelligence agencies believe Russia is indeed preparing for a potential attack on European NATO members. So, given her consistently pro-Russian views from the past, no wonder she came out with this. But again, it just points to the inconsistencies inside the entire US administration.
It just seems to me to be such a completely different perception of the Russian threat in the US compared to what Europe is.
Again, I don't think it's a universal US perception of threat. I think it's a perception of people that Trump selected personally against better judgment to positions such as coordinating national intelligence. These were loyalists. They were very often conspiracy theorists, and people who, like Tulsi Gabbard, blamed Ukraine for the war. So she's consistent, but it doesn't mean that the U.S. administration and the body politic in the United States is on the same page.
Adam, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there, but great as always to have a chat and have a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too.
Thank you.
And to our viewers.
Thank you, yeah. And that's all from us in this episode of News in Depth. Don't go away, though, lots more coming up. Goodbye.